My fingers caught the silk of Kenzo Tanaka's tie, adjusting the knot while my eyes tracked the reflection in the polished wood behind him. "Your driver has a gun," I whispered, smoothing the fabric. "Don't get in that car." Before we continue, tell us where you're watching from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. Now, let's jump right back in. Kenzo's body went rigid beneath my hands. The casual amusement in his eyes vanished, replaced by something cold and lethal. I didn't pull away. I brushed his collar, keeping up the charade, even as my pulse hammered against my throat. I knew what a man looked like before he pulled a trigger. I'd seen that same twitchy, desperate energy in my father's crew before things went bad. And the driver outside? He had that look. Kenzo's hand covered mine against his chest. How can you tell? His posture is out of place. He's sweating in cold weather. I met his eyes. He's not your driver anymore. He's someone else's weapon. For 3 seconds, nothing moved. Then Kenzo smiled, cold and sharp and dangerous. What's your name again? Amaris, sir. Amaris. He pressed my hand flat against his tie, against his heartbeat. You just saved my life. That means you're mine now. I should have been afraid, but I'd been running my whole life. Yes, sir. His smile widened. Good. Now let's go see what Malio has to say for himself. He released my hand and moved toward the door with the kind of controlled grace that made dangerous men look elegant. I followed 2 steps behind, the way I'd been trained, but my mind was racing ahead. Malio had been with the Tanaka family for 8 years. Everyone in the household trusted him. If he turned, someone had gotten to him, and that meant the threat was bigger than just one man with a gun. Kenzo stopped at the doorway, his hand resting against the frame. He didn't look back at me when he spoke. Stay close. If anything feels wrong, you tell me immediately. Understood? Yes, sir. We walked through the corridor, past the oil paintings of men I didn't recognize, and the antique vases that probably cost more than my entire life. The house had always felt like a museum to me, cold and untouchable, but now it felt like a trap. Every shadow could hide another traitor. Every closed door could conceal an ambush. Malio stood beside the black sedan in the circular driveway, his hand moving to open the rear door when he saw us approaching. His smile was too wide, too eager. Sweat beaded at his temples despite the cool October air. Kenzo descended the stone steps slowly, deliberately. I stayed 1 step behind and to his right, my hands clasped in front of me like any good servant. But my eyes never left Malio's hands. Malio, Kenzo said, his voice smooth as expensive whiskey. Beautiful evening, isn't it? Yes, sir. Perfect for your meeting. Malio's hand trembled slightly on the door handle. Shall we? In a moment. Kenzo paused at the bottom step, tilting his head slightly. I've been thinking about loyalty lately, about what it means to serve a family for 8 years, to eat at their table, to be trusted with their lives. Malio's smile faltered. Sir? Tell me something, Malio. Who approached you? Was it the Volkov syndicate, the Ferretti family? Kenzo's voice dropped lower, colder. Or was it someone closer to home? The driver's hand moved toward his waistband. I didn't think. I grabbed the heavy brass planter from the top step and hurled it down with everything I had. It struck Malio's shoulder just as his fingers closed around the grip of his weapon, sending him stumbling sideways. The gun clattered across the stone driveway. 3 men in dark suits erupted from the garage, weapons drawn, surrounding Malio before he could recover. One of them kicked the pistol away, while another forced him to his knees. Kenzo turned to look at me then. Really look at me, like he was seeing something he hadn't expected to find in a 24-year-old woman who cleaned his house for minimum wage. Where did you learn to move like that? South Memphis, sir. You learn fast or you don't learn at all. He studied me for another long moment, then walked back up the steps until we were at eye level. You didn't panic. You didn't freeze. You acted. He glanced at the men restraining Malio, then back at me. How long have you been working here? 3 weeks, sir. 3 weeks, and you noticed what 8 years of loyalty made me blind to." He reached into his jacket and pulled out a slim leather wallet, extracting a black card. "As of this moment, you're no longer a maid. You're my personal assistant. Your salary is now $10,000 a month. You'll move from the servants' quarters to the guest wing tonight. Any questions?" My mind reeled. $10,000 a month. The guest wing. Personal assistant to a man whose enemies just tried to kill him in his own driveway. Why me? The question slipped out before I could stop it. Kenzo's expression didn't change, but something flickered in his dark eyes. Respect, maybe. Or recognition. Because you see things other people miss. Because you don't hesitate when it matters. And because in this world, Amaris, the only currency that means anything is trust. You saved my life without knowing if I'd even believe you. That kind of instinct can't be taught. He handed me the card. "This is the code to the guest wing. Move your things tonight. Tomorrow, your real education begins." He turned and walked toward the garage, leaving me standing on the steps with the black access card in my trembling hand, and the sound of Malio's pleading voice echoing across the driveway. I looked down at the card, at the silver numbers embossed on the matte black surface, and realized with absolute clarity that my life had just changed forever. There was no going back to scrubbing floors and keeping my head down. I'd stepped into Kenzo Tanaka's world, and men didn't walk away from that world. They either survived it, or they disappeared. I closed my fingers around the card and walked back into the house. The guest wing sat on the 3rd floor, far from the cramped attic room I'd occupied for the past 3 weeks. When I swiped the black card against the reader, the lock clicked open with a soft electronic hum. The door swung inward to reveal a space 3 times the size of my old quarters, with cream walls, a king bed dressed in dark linens, and a private bathroom with marble countertops. A tall window overlooked the eastern gardens, where security lights cast long shadows across perfectly trimmed hedges. I moved my few belongings in a single trip: 2 duffel bags, a backpack, and the knife I kept hidden in the lining of my winter coat. Everything I owned fit on one shelf in the walk-in closet that still had more empty space than I knew what to do with. Sleep didn't come easily that night. Every sound in the unfamiliar room made me tense, waiting for footsteps in the hallway or the click of a lock being bypassed. Giovanni's sweating face kept replaying in my mind, along with the weight of that brass planter in my hands and the sick thud it made when it connected with his shoulder. I'd hurt people before, back in Memphis when I had no choice. But this felt different. This time I'd chosen a side. At 6:30 a.m., someone knocked on my door. I opened it to find a woman in her 50s with silver-streaked hair pulled into a tight ponytail. She wore black slacks and a crisp white blouse, and her expression was all business. "Miss Kane, I'm Helen, head of household operations. Mr. Tanaka requests your presence in the East Study at 7 o'clock sharp. I suggest you dress appropriately." Her eyes traveled over my worn jeans and faded t-shirt with barely concealed disapproval. "There are suitable clothes in your closet. He had them delivered this morning." She left before I could respond. I found the clothes hanging in the section of the closet I hadn't checked the night before. Tailored black pants, fitted blouses in gray and navy, a charcoal jacket with clean lines. Everything in my size, everything expensive enough that I was afraid to touch the fabric too roughly. I chose the gray blouse and black pants, leaving the jacket on its hanger. The East Study was a room I'd cleaned exactly twice during my 3 weeks as a maid, and both times Kenzo hadn't been in it. Now he sat behind a wide desk made of dark wood, his attention fixed on a laptop screen. He didn't look up when I entered. "Close the door," he said. I did. Malio gave up his handler at 4:15 this morning. It was Damian Volkov's nephew, a low-level enforcer trying to make a name for himself. Sloppy work, which is why it failed. Kenzo finally looked at me, his expression unreadable. "But it won't be the last attempt. The Volkov family has been trying to push into our territory for 6 months. They see weakness and they exploit it." I stayed silent, waiting. "Your job is to watch, to observe, to tell me when something feels wrong before it becomes a problem." He closed the laptop and stood. Today you're coming with me to a business meeting at the Riverside Hotel. There will be 7 people in the room, including us. I need you to tell me which one doesn't belong. How will I know? The same way you knew about Malio. You pay attention. He came around the desk, moving with that same controlled grace that made him seem relaxed even when I suspected he was anything but. People reveal themselves in small ways. The way they hold their body, where their eyes go when they think no one's watching, how they react when information surprises them. You already have the instinct for it. I'm just teaching you to trust it. We took a different car, a dark gray sedan with bulletproof glass and a driver I didn't recognize. Kenzo made 3 phone calls during the 20-minute drive, speaking in rapid Japanese that I couldn't follow. His tone remained calm throughout, but I noticed the way his jaw tightened during the second call, the slight tension in his shoulders that suggested the conversation hadn't gone the way he wanted. The Riverside Hotel was the kind of place where politicians and executives held private meetings away from their offices. Our driver pulled up to a side entrance, and 2 men in dark suits met us at the door. Security, probably Kenzo's own people. They didn't search me, but I felt their eyes tracking my every movement as we walked through a service corridor to a private elevator. The meeting room was smaller than I expected, with a round table and 6 chairs. 3 men were already seated, drinks in hand, conversation stopping the moment we entered. I recognized one of them from photos I'd seen in Kenzo's office during my cleaning shifts. Takeshi Sato, head of the Sato Shipping Company and one of Kenzo's oldest business partners. The other 2 were unfamiliar. One was young, maybe 30, with nervous energy that made him tap his fingers against his water glass. The other was older, 60 at least, with steel gray hair and the kind of stillness that came from decades of practice. "Gentlemen," Kenzo said smoothly, "thank you for meeting on such short notice. This is Miss Kane, my new assistant." 3 pairs of eyes assessed me with varying degrees of interest and dismissal. I took my position behind Kenzo's chair, hands clasped, expression neutral, exactly the way an assistant should stand. The meeting lasted 47 minutes. They discussed shipping routes and container schedules, warehouse capacities, and customs protocols. Legal business, as far as I could tell, but the tension in the room suggested layers beneath the surface conversation. And I watched. Takeshi Sato spoke with confidence, his body language open, his eye contact direct. He joked with Kenzo about a golf game they'd played last month. Nothing about him felt wrong. The older man, introduced as Kenji Mori, barely spoke. When he did, his words were carefully chosen, his tone measured. He watched everyone in the room with the same intensity, giving nothing away. A professional, cautious, but not dishonest. The younger man was the problem. His name was Daichi Yamamoto, and he smiled too much. Every time Kenzo mentioned the Volkov family, even in passing, Daichi's expression would freeze for half a second before the smile returned. His fingers never stopped moving, tapping out invisible rhythms against the table. And twice, when he thought no one was looking, his eyes drifted to the door like he was measuring the distance. When the meeting ended and we returned to the car, Kenzo waited until we were moving before he spoke. "Well?" "Yamamoto," I said. "He's feeding someone information." Kenzo's mouth curved into that cold, dangerous smile I was beginning to recognize. "Good," he said. "Very good. Tomorrow we find out who's paying him." But tomorrow came with silence. Kenzo spent the entire morning in his private office with the door locked, and when he finally emerged at 1:45 p.m., his expression was darker than I'd seen it. He didn't speak to me. Didn't acknowledge me standing in the hallway where I'd been waiting for 3 hours. He just walked past, down the stairs, and out to the eastern terrace where he stood alone, staring at nothing. I'd learned in Memphis that angry men were unpredictable, dangerous. My father had taught me that lesson with his fists and his silences, with the way he could go from calm to violent in the space between heartbeats. But Kenzo's anger felt different, controlled, turned inward like a blade he was holding against his own throat. I waited 30 minutes before I followed him outside. He didn't turn when I approached, just kept staring at the garden where late afternoon shadows stretched across the grass. Up close, I could see the tension in his shoulders, the way his hands gripped the stone railing hard enough that his knuckles had gone white. "My brother was 16 when he died," Kenzo said quietly. "Younger than you, smarter than me. He had this way of seeing the world, like everything was a puzzle he could solve if he just had enough time." He paused, and something in his voice cracked. He didn't get enough time. I stayed silent, sensing that this wasn't a conversation. It was a confession. It was supposed to be me in that car. I was the one who had the meeting across town. But Hiroki insisted on going instead because I'd been up for 2 days straight dealing with a shipment problem, and he said I needed rest. Kenzo's grip on the railing tightened. The bomb went off at 3:17 p.m. They found pieces of him scattered across 4 city blocks. The air between us felt heavy, thick with ghosts I couldn't see but knew were there. The man who planted the bomb worked for us. Hiroki trusted him. Our father trusted him. He'd been with the family for 12 years, and he sold us out for $200,000 and a promise of protection from the Saito clan. Kenzo finally turned to look at me, and I saw something raw in his eyes. That's where this came from. He touched the scar that cut through his left eyebrow, a thin white line I'd noticed the first day but never asked about. I was the one who found the traitor, tracked him down to a safe house in Osaka, and when I walked in, he tried to kill me with a piece of broken mirror. Kenzo's smile was bitter. I was 19, stupid, angry. I wanted him to suffer the way Hiroki suffered, but he fought back harder than I expected. Left me with this reminder that revenge is messy and painful and never brings back the people you've lost. I thought about my own scars, the ones that didn't show on my skin. My father was a drunk, I heard myself say. Mean drunk, the kind that got meaner the more he drank. My mother left when I was 8, just walked out one morning and never came back. Can't say I blame her. Kenzo's attention shifted fully to me now, listening. He used to say I was worthless, that I'd never amount to anything because I had my mother's weak blood, beat me for burning dinner, for talking back, for breathing too loud when he had a headache. The words came easier than I expected, like lancing an old wound. When I was 15, he came home drunk and angry about losing his job, started throwing things, broke every dish in the kitchen. Then he grabbed a bottle and came at me. I could still remember the weight of the cast iron skillet in my hands, the sound it made connecting with his skull, the way he dropped like someone had cut his strings. I put him in the hospital for 3 weeks. Fractured skull, broken jaw, internal bleeding. When he woke up, I told him if he ever touched me again, I'd finish the job. I met Kenzo's eyes. He believed me, moved out 2 months later, haven't seen him since. "Do you regret it?" Kenzo asked. "No, I regret not doing it sooner." The honesty felt dangerous, but also freeing. I learned that day that the only person who's going to protect you is yourself, that waiting for someone to save you is just another way of dying slow. Kenzo studied me for a long moment, and I saw recognition in his expression. Not pity, not judgment. Just understanding between two people who'd both learned the same hard lesson. "Hiroki believed the best in people," he said softly, "right up until the end. He thought loyalty was earned through kindness, through treating people fairly and giving them second chances." His voice hardened. "I learned loyalty is earned through fear and incentive, through making the cost of betrayal higher than any reward." "Is that why you kept Malio alive?" I asked. "To make an example?" "Malio is alive because dead men don't give up information. But once he's told us everything he knows about the Volkov operation, he'll disappear." Kenzo turned back to the garden. "That's the world you've entered, Kane. There are no second chances here. No mercy for traitors. You're either loyal or you're dead. And the line between those two things is thinner than you think." "I understand. Do you?" He looked at me again, searching my face for doubt. "Because once you cross certain lines, you can't uncross them. You can't go back to being the person you were before." Hiroki never understood that. He thought he could stay clean while working in a dirty business. It got him killed. "I'm not your brother," I said. "And I stopped trying to stay clean a long time ago." Something shifted in Kenzo's expression. The raw vulnerability closed up, replaced by that cold calculation I was more familiar with. "Yamamoto is meeting his Volkov contact tonight at 11:30 p.m. at a bar called the Serpent's Den in the Industrial District. You're coming with me." To do what? To watch, to learn, and to understand exactly what loyalty costs in my world. He walked past me, back toward the house, leaving me alone on the terrace, with the weight of shared trauma hanging in the air like smoke. I touched my own invisible scars, the ones my father had left on my ribs and my back, and wondered if Kenzo was right, if crossing certain lines changed you into something you couldn't recognize anymore. Then I thought about Malio's gun and the brass planter, and the choice I'd made without hesitation. I'd already crossed the line. I just hadn't admitted it yet. The Serpent's Den sat in a part of the city where streetlights flickered and died, where warehouses crouched like sleeping beasts, and where questions got you hurt faster than answers. We arrived at 11 o'clock p.m., early enough to watch the players arrive, but late enough to blend with the sparse crowd. Kenzo had traded his usual business attire for dark jeans and a black jacket that concealed whatever he was carrying beneath it. I wore similar clothes, my hair pulled back tight, no jewelry, nothing that would catch light or attention. We looked like 100 other couples in the city at night, forgettable, invisible. The bar itself was a narrow space with concrete floors and exposed pipes running across the ceiling. The kind of place where cash was king and nobody asked for identification. We took a booth in the back corner with a clear view of the entrance and the bar. Kenzo ordered whiskey. I asked for water. "Yamamoto will arrive first," Kenzo said quietly, his eyes never leaving the door. "He always does. Nervous types like to scope out the location before a meet, check exits, count heads. His contact will come 15 minutes later. Watch how they interact, how comfortable they are with each other, how long they've been doing this." "How do you know all this?" "Because I've been doing this since I was 17. My father believed in education through experience. Sink or swim." I chose to swim. He took a sip of his drink. "Yamamoto doesn't know we're watching. He thinks Giovanni was an isolated incident, thinks the family is too distracted with Volkov threats to notice a small-time mole in our business circle. He's wrong. Yes, and that mistake will cost him everything." Yamamoto walked through the door at 11:18 p.m., his eyes darting around the space exactly the way Kenzo predicted. He wore a dark coat and a baseball cap pulled low, like the disguise would make any difference. He ordered sake at the bar and carried it to a booth on the opposite side of the room, positioning himself where he could watch both the entrance and the emergency exit that led to the alley. We waited. At 11:34 p.m., a man in a gray jacket entered. He was built like a fighter, broad shoulders, thick neck, hands that looked like they'd broken more than a few faces. He didn't scan the room the way Yamamoto had. He walked straight to the booth like he owned the place, slid in across from our target, and started talking before he'd even settled into the seat. "That's Viktor Sokolov," Kenzo murmured. "Damian Volkov's enforcer. He's the one who recruited Malio, probably the one who recruited Yamamoto too. The Volkov family likes to use him for their dirty work because he's efficient and disposable if things go wrong." I watched the two men talk. Yamamoto's body language was all wrong, too stiff, too nervous. He kept glancing toward the exits like he expected trouble to walk through any second. Victor, on the other hand, looked relaxed. He leaned back in the booth, one arm stretched along the top of the seat, confident in a way that said he'd done this 1,000 times before. "They're not comfortable together," I said. "Yamamoto's scared of him." "Good observation. What else?" I studied the interaction, focusing on the small details. Victor's doing all the talking. Yamamoto's just nodding, not really engaging. He's not getting paid enough for this, or maybe he's in too deep and can't get out. Both, probably. Victor has a reputation for leverage. He finds your weakness and exploits it until you're trapped. Could be debt, could be family, could be something you did that you don't want anyone to know about. Kenzo's expression hardened. "Once the Volkovs have their hooks in you, Extraction usually requires a body bag. The meeting lasted less than 10 minutes. Victor slid an envelope across the table. Yamamoto took it, tucked it inside his coat, and said something that made Victor laugh. Then they both stood, shook hands like old friends, and separated. Victor headed for the main exit. Yamamoto went for the back door. "Stay here," Kenzo said, sliding out of the booth. "Don't move until I come back." He was gone before I could respond, following Yamamoto toward the emergency exit with the kind of casual purpose that wouldn't draw attention. I sat alone in the booth, my water glass sweating condensation onto the scarred table, my heart rate climbing with each passing second. 3 minutes felt like 30. Then I saw it. The glint of light reflecting off glass on the rooftop across the street, visible through the bar's grimy window. A scope. Maybe binoculars. Something that didn't belong in this neighborhood at this time of night. My father used to say that survival was about seeing the thing that everyone else missed, about trusting your gut when your brain was still trying to make sense of the information. I'd learned to listen to that instinct, and right now it was screaming. I moved without thinking, crossing the bar in long strides, pushing through the emergency exit into the alley, where Kenzo had Yamamoto pressed against the brick wall. One hand around the younger man's throat. "Sniper," I said. "Rooftop across the street." I saw the scope reflection through the window. Kenzo's head snapped toward me, then up toward the roofline. In that split second of distraction, Yamamoto tried to run. Kenzo caught him by the collar and threw him face first into the dumpster, then grabbed my arm and pulled me deeper into the alley, just as the first shot cracked through the air. The bullet hit the brick wall where Kenzo's head had been, sending chips of masonry exploding into the darkness. He pushed me behind a concrete barrier and drew a handgun from inside his jacket, his movements smooth and practiced. "How many?" he asked. "Just one, I think. East side, 3 buildings over." "You think or you know?" "I know." The certainty in my voice surprised me. Kenzo looked at me for a heartbeat, then nodded. "When I move, you grab Yamamoto and drag him behind this barrier. Don't hesitate, don't think, just do it." "What are you going to do?" "Draw fire. Give you time. Ready?" I wasn't, but I nodded anyway. Kenzo broke from cover, running low and fast toward the opposite side of the alley. 2 more shots rang out, both missing by inches. I lunged for Yamamoto, grabbed his collar, and hauled him backward with strength I didn't know I had. He was heavier than he looked, dead weight and panic, but adrenaline made me strong. I got him behind the barrier just as another bullet sparked off the dumpster. Kenzo returned fire, 3 precise shots toward the rooftop. Then silence, the kind of silence that felt heavy and wrong. "Did you hit him?" I asked. "No, but he knows we're armed now. He'll relocate or retreat." Kenzo kept his weapon trained on the roofline. "Victor set this up. Planned to eliminate Yamamoto after the meet. Probably us too if we followed. Clean up loose ends." Yamamoto was crying now, curled on the ground, his expensive coat soaked with alley filth and his own fear. "Please, please, I didn't know. They said they just wanted information. They said no one would get hurt." "Everyone always says that," Kenzo replied, "right up until the bullets start flying." He made a phone call in rapid Japanese. 2 minutes later, 3 black SUVs pulled into the alley, blocking both exits. Men in tactical gear emerged, securing the area with military precision. One of them approached Kenzo, spoke quietly, then gestured to Yamamoto. They loaded him into the middle vehicle and drove away. Kenzo holstered his weapon and turned to me. "You saved my life. Again. Just doing my job. Your job is to observe, not to put yourself in the line of fire." But there was no anger in his voice, just something that might have been respect. "You saw the sniper before I did. How? Memphis rules. If it feels wrong, it probably is." He smiled then, that cold, dangerous smile. "You're learning fast, Amaris. Maybe too fast." We walked back to where our car was waiting, and I realized my hands were shaking. Not from fear, from the crash of adrenaline, from the realization that I'd just survived my second attempt on Kenzo Tanaka's life in less than a week. And somehow, impossibly, I was starting to enjoy it. The realization should have scared me, should have sent me running back to Memphis, or anywhere else that wasn't here. Wasn't this life where bullets whistled past my head and men disappeared into black SUVs, never to be seen again? But when we pulled through the gates of the estate at 1:27 a.m., all I felt was alive. Kenzo walked me to the guest wing in silence. When we reached my door, he stopped, studying me with those dark, unreadable eyes. "Get some sleep," he said. "Tomorrow we deal with the fallout." But I couldn't sleep. I paced my room until 3:15 a.m., replaying the sniper's scope glinting in the darkness, the sound of bullets hitting brick, the weight of Yamamoto's body as I dragged him to safety. My hands had stopped shaking, but my mind wouldn't stop moving, wouldn't stop analyzing every choice I'd made in that alley. I'd stepped into the line of fire for a man I barely knew. A man whose world was built on violence and secrets and the kind of loyalty that came with a price tag written in blood. And I'd do it again without hesitation. That's what scared me most. Morning came with Helen knocking on my door at 7 o'clock sharp, her expression even more disapproving than usual. "Mr. Tanaka wants to see you in his office immediately." I dressed quickly in the black pants and gray blouse, ran a brush through my hair, and headed downstairs. Kenzo's office was on the second floor, a spacious room with dark wood furniture and shelves lined with books I suspected he'd actually read. He sat behind his desk, phone pressed to his ear, speaking in Japanese with a tone that could freeze water. He gestured for me to sit. I did. The conversation lasted another 5 minutes before he ended the call and set the phone down with deliberate care. "Viktor Sokolov's body was found in a shipping container at the port this morning. 3 bullets to the chest, 1 to the head. Very professional work." "Did you order it?" "No. Domain Volkov did." Kenzo leaned back in his chair. "Victor failed. He let a target escape, compromised a recruitment operation, and exposed Volkov's interest in our business dealings. In that world, failure has consequences. So it's over." "No. It's just beginning." He stood and walked to the window overlooking the front grounds. "Dmitry Volkov is making a statement. He's telling me that he's willing to cut loose his own people to show strength, to demonstrate that he's not afraid of escalation. But he's also telling me something else." "What?" "That he wants what I have badly enough to sacrifice pieces to get it." Kenzo turned to face me. "My family controls the Eastern Port District. Every shipment that comes through those docks, legal or otherwise, goes through our channels. We've held that territory for 30 years. Volkov wants it, and he's willing to start a war to take it. Can he? He can try. The Volkov family has numbers and money and enough political connections to make problems disappear, but they don't have what we have." His expression hardened. "They don't have loyalty built on 3 decades of protecting this city's interests. They don't have the infrastructure. And they don't have you." The last words hung in the air between us like a challenge. "What does that mean?" Kenzo moved closer, stopping just in front of my chair. "It means you're mine now, Amaris. Not because I'm paying you, though the money certainly helps. Not because you're afraid of me, though you probably should be. You're mine because you chose to step into that alley last night. You chose to save my life instead of running. You crossed a line, and there's no going back across it." "I know. Do you?" He crouched down so we were at eye level. "Because once you're part of this family, leaving isn't an option. People who try to leave end up like Victor, like Malio, like every other person who thought they could walk away with what they know." His voice dropped lower. "I need to hear you say it. I need to know you understand what you're agreeing to." I met his eyes and saw the same thing I'd seen on the terrace when he told me about his brother. Not cruelty, not manipulation, just cold, hard truth delivered by someone who'd learned it the expensive way. "I understand I'm yours. I'm part of this family." The words felt like a brand, permanent and burning. "I won't run. I won't betray you. And I won't leave. Even if it costs you everything?" I thought about my father's fists, about my mother walking out the door and never looking back, about the 8 years I spent surviving in Memphis by learning when to fight and when to disappear. I'd spent my whole life belonging to nothing and no one, drifting through a world that didn't care if I lived or died. This was the first time anyone had ever wanted me to stay. I don't have anything left to lose, I said. Kenzo stood, and something in his expression shifted. Not softer, but different. Accepting. Yes, you do. You have this. You have purpose. You have protection. And you have my word that as long as you're loyal to this family, no one touches you. Not Volkov. Not anyone. He extended his hand. Welcome to the Tanaka family, Cain, for better or worse. I took his hand. His grip was firm, warm, and final as a contract signed in blood. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. You haven't met my mother. He released my hand and returned to his desk. She arrives tomorrow from Kyoto. She's requested an audience with you. Why? Because she wants to know who saved her son's life twice in 1 week, and because she doesn't trust easily. Kenzo's smile was grim. My father built this family's empire, but my mother is the one who keeps it standing. If she doesn't approve of you, this conversation we just had becomes irrelevant. What happens if she doesn't approve? Let's hope we don't find out. The rest of the day passed in a blur of normal tasks that felt anything but normal. I sat in on 3 conference calls, watched Kenzo negotiate shipping rates with a port authority official who clearly feared him, and learned more about import regulations than I ever wanted to know. But beneath the mundane business discussions, I could feel the tension building. Yamamoto was somewhere being interrogated. Victor was dead. Domain Volkov was planning his next move. And tomorrow, I had to convince Kenzo's mother that I deserved to stay alive. I returned to my room at 8:45 p.m., exhausted but unable to rest. I kept thinking about Kenzo's words. You're mine now. The finality of it. The weight. I'd traded one kind of prison for another, except this time I'd walked in willingly with my eyes open. I pulled out my phone and stared at the screen, at the contacts list that held exactly 3 numbers. One was the burner phone I used to keep in touch with my old landlord. One was a Memphis number I'd never called and never would. The last was Helen's extension. No family, no friends, no one who would notice if I disappeared. Kenzo was right. I didn't have anything left to lose. But maybe, in this strange dark world of his, I could finally find something worth keeping. She arrived at 2:30 p.m. the next day in a black town car with diplomatic plates and 2 security vehicles flanking it like predators. I watched from the second-floor window as Kenzo descended the front steps to greet her. Bowing low, in a gesture of respect I'd never seen him offer anyone else. Yuki Tanaka was 71 years old, according to the brief research I'd done that morning, but she moved like someone 20 years younger. She wore a tailored navy dress in pearls, her silver hair swept into an elegant twist. Even from a distance, I could feel the power radiating from her, the kind of authority that didn't need to announce itself. Helen appeared at my door 10 minutes later. Mrs. Tanaka requests your presence in the solarium immediately. The solarium was a glass-enclosed room on the east side of the house, filled with orchids and bonsai trees that probably cost more than most people's cars. Yuki Tanaka sat in a high-backed chair near the window, a cup of tea resting on the table beside her. She didn't look up when I entered, just continued examining an orchid bloom with the focused attention of someone conducting surgery. You may sit, she said in perfect English, her accent barely noticeable. I took the chair across from her and waited. She set down the orchid and finally looked at me. Her eyes were the same dark brown as Kenzo's, but colder, sharper, like obsidian blades. My son tells me you saved his life. Twice. Yes, ma'am. Tell me about the first time. I recounted the story of Malio and the brass planter, keeping my voice steady and factual. She listened without interruption, her expression revealing nothing. And the second time? I described the sniper, the rooftop reflection, dragging Yamamoto behind cover while bullets tore through the alley. Still, she gave nothing away. You are from Memphis, she said when I finished. Not a question. Yes, ma'am. A difficult city, violent. Many people there do not survive to your age. She picked up her teacup, sipped delicately. Your father was Robert Kane. He worked for the local distributors, small-time operations. He had a reputation for brutality and poor impulse control. The casual recitation of my history felt like being stripped naked in front of a stranger. You investigated me. Of course. You think I would allow someone into my family without knowing everything about them? Her smile was thin and cold. I know about the hospital incident when you were 15. I know about the 3 years you spent moving between temporary housing. I know you worked 4 jobs to put yourself through community college before you ran out of money. I know why you came to this city. I know all of it. Miss Kane, then you know I'm not a threat. On the contrary, you are exactly the kind of threat I worry about most. She set down her cup. You are intelligent, resourceful, and desperate. Desperate people make dangerous choices. They sell secrets. They turn traitor when the price is right. They put their own survival above loyalty. I would never betray Kenzo. That is what Sakura said. The name fell between us like a stone into still water. She was very beautiful, very clever. She saved my son's life once, just as you have. He trusted her completely, gave her access to family business, to sensitive information, to his private thoughts. Yuki's expression hardened. Then one day she disappeared, simply vanished, along with $2 million in cash and a hard drive containing details of every business arrangement we had with our partners in Taiwan. My stomach dropped. What happened to her? We never found her. Some say she made it to South America. Some say she changed her identity and started over in Europe. Some say she is at the bottom of the Pacific Ocean with concrete shoes. Yuki leaned forward slightly. I believe she is living comfortably somewhere warm, spending money she stole from us, and laughing at how easy it was to fool a young man blinded by attraction and trust. I'm not Sakura. No, you are smarter than she was. More dangerous, perhaps, because you understand violence in a way she never did. She was a con artist playing at being dangerous. You, Miss Kane, have actually survived danger. You know how to hurt people. How to kill if necessary. Her eyes never left mine. That makes you either the perfect ally or the perfect threat. Which do you think I am? I think you are someone who has spent her entire life being expendable, being used and discarded by people who saw you as nothing more than a tool. She stood, moving to examine another orchid. My son sees potential in you. He believes you can be trusted. But my son also believed in Sakura, and that mistake nearly cost us everything. So what happens now? Yuki turned to face me fully. Now I tell you a story, and you listen carefully. When Kenzo was 19, after he killed the man who murdered his brother, he came to me covered in blood and asked if he was a monster. I told him no. I told him he was doing what needed to be done to protect this family, and that sometimes protection requires terrible choices. She moved closer, her presence filling the space between us. But I also told him that the moment he starts enjoying those terrible choices, the moment violence becomes easy instead of necessary, he should walk away. Because that is when you stop being a protector and become a predator. Her voice dropped lower. You said in the alley that you were starting to enjoy it. That concerns me greatly, Miss Kane. Heat flushed my face. I hadn't realized Kenzo had shared that detail with her. I didn't mean it like that. I just meant that I felt alive, that I felt useful for the first time in my life. And what happens when feeling useful is not enough? When you need more violence, more danger, more blood to feel that alive? She studied me like a scientist examining a specimen. I have seen it happen before. People who discover they have a talent for darkness, and they chase that feeling until it consumes them, until they become the very thing they once feared. I won't let that happen. You cannot promise that. No one can. Yuki returned to her chair, settling into it with perfect posture. But I will give you a chance, Miss Kane. One chance to prove that your loyalty is genuine. that you are not another Sakura waiting for the right moment to betray us. What do you need me to do? Nothing, yet. Simply continue as you have been. Protect my son, use your instincts, help him survive the war that is coming. Her expression softened just slightly, barely perceptible. But know this, I will be watching you. Every choice you make, every decision, every moment when you think no one is looking. And if I see even the smallest sign that you are playing us, that you are another beautiful lie waiting to destroy my family, I will eliminate you myself. The threat wasn't delivered with heat or anger, just cold, factual certainty from a woman who had clearly followed through on such promises before. I understand. Good, then we are finished here. She picked up her teacup, dismissing me without another word. I stood and walked to the door, my legs steadier than I expected them to be. Miss Kane, Yuki's voice stopped me at the threshold. My son cares for very few people in this world. The last woman he cared for nearly destroyed him. If you do the same, death will be a mercy compared to what I will do to you. I looked back at her, at this elegant 71-year-old woman with steel in her spine and ice in her veins. I won't hurt him. You have my word. Words are cheap. Actions matter. Show me through your choices that you deserve the trust my son has placed in you. I nodded and left, closing the door softly behind me. Kenzo was waiting in the hallway, his expression unreadable. How did it go? She threatened to kill me if I betray you. She threatens everyone. Don't take it personally. She told me about Sakura. His jaw tightened. Of course she did. Is it true? Did Sakura really steal from you? Yes. Every word my mother said was true. He started walking and I fell into step beside him. I was 23, stupid, believed that loyalty could be earned with kindness instead of fear. Sakura taught me otherwise. Do you think I'm like her? Kenzo stopped, turning to face me. No, Sakura was a performance. You're the real thing. That's why my mother is worried. The weight of his words stayed with me for the next 3 days. 3 days of relative quiet, where I shadowed Kenzo through meetings and phone calls, learning the rhythm of his operations. 3 days where Yuki Tanaka watched me from across rooms with those cold, calculating eyes, evaluating every gesture I made. Then on the 4th morning, everything changed. I was reviewing shipping manifests in Kenzo's office at 9:15 a.m. when his phone rang. He answered in Japanese, listened for 30 seconds, and his entire body went rigid. When he hung up, his expression was darker than I'd ever seen it. What happened? The Volkov family just hit our warehouse on Marlborough Street. 4 of our people are dead. They took everything, $3 million in product, and burned what they couldn't carry. He was already moving, grabbing his jacket, checking the weapon holstered at his hip. This is the escalation I've been expecting. Damien is making his move. What do we do? We is not the appropriate word here. I go assess the damage and coordinate our response. You stay here where it's safe. No? The word came out harder than I intended. You said I was yours, that I was part of this family. You don't get to protect me from the consequences of that choice. Kenzo studied me for a long moment. This isn't going to be clean, Amaris. This is war, real war, with bodies and blood and choices that you can't take back. Are you sure you want to see that? I'm sure. He nodded once, sharp and final. Then let's go. The warehouse district looked different in daylight. The buildings that had seemed menacing at night just looked abandoned now, hollow shells of concrete and rusted metal. Our warehouse, or what was left of it, sat at the end of Marlborough Street with smoke still rising from its collapsed roof. Fire trucks were leaving as we arrived. A police cruiser sat nearby, but the 2 officers inside barely glanced at us. Paid to look the other way, probably. Kenzo's security team had already secured the perimeter, grim-faced men in tactical gear who nodded as we passed. Inside was worse than I expected. The interior had been gutted by fire. The metal shelving units twisted into abstract sculptures by the heat. But the fire had been controlled, deliberate. They'd burned only what they wanted to burn, taken only what they wanted to take. And in the center of the space, arranged like a method, were 4 bodies. I'd seen death before. My father's crew in Memphis hadn't been gentle people. But this was different. This was execution. Clean shots to the back of the head, professional and cold. The kind of killing that said, we don't care who knows we did this. Takeshi, Kenzo said quietly, kneeling beside one of the bodies. He had 3 kids, just paid off his house last year. I stood behind him, fighting the urge to look away. To prove I was strong enough for this world, I had to see it, had to understand what loyalty cost. The pattern is deliberate, I heard myself say. They didn't just attack, they sent a message. 4 bodies, 4 million in losses, counting the product and the building. They want you to retaliate emotionally instead of strategically. Kenzo stood, his expression unreadable. Keep going. If you hit back immediately, you're predictable. They'll expect it. They'll be ready. I moved around the space, studying the burn patterns, the positioning of the bodies. But this warehouse is on the edge of your territory, close to neutral ground. They chose it for a reason. What reason? Because it's a test. They want to see if you'll defend every inch of your territory or if you'll consolidate, pull back to more defensible positions. I met his eyes. They're trying to learn how you think, how you respond to pressure. What would you do? The question caught me off guard. He was actually asking for my opinion, treating me like a strategist instead of just a bodyguard. I'd give them what they expect. Hit one of their smaller operations, something proportional. Make it look like you're following the rules of engagement. I paused, but I'd also be mapping their entire network. Every warehouse, every safe house, every place they think is secure. And then when they're comfortable, when they think they understand your pattern, I'd hit everything at once. Kenzo's mouth curved into that cold, dangerous smile. You think like a soldier. I think like someone who survived Memphis by understanding that the obvious move is usually the wrong one. He pulled out his phone and made a call, speaking in rapid Japanese. When he finished, he turned to me. We have intelligence that suggests Volkov is moving a major shipment through the port in 5 days. Weapons, probably, or high-grade pharmaceuticals. My source says it's coming through berth 17 at the Eastern Dock. That's our territory. Exactly. He's being bold, testing to see if we'll notice, if we'll act. Kenzo's eyes narrowed. But berth 17 is wrong. It's too obvious, too exposed. If I were moving something valuable through hostile territory, I'd use misdirection. Where do you think it's really going? Berth 9. Smaller, less traffic, easier to secure. But I can't move on a guess. I need confirmation. He looked at me intently. I need you to map their patterns over the next 3 days. Watch the port, track their vehicles, tell me where they're actually moving product versus where they want us to think they're moving it. How do I get access to the port? Helen will provide you with credentials. As far as anyone knows, you're conducting a routine inspection for our shipping company. He checked his watch. You start tomorrow at 6 a.m. Take photos. Note vehicle patterns. Watch for anything that feels wrong. Trust your instincts the way you did with Giovanni and the sniper. And if I find something, you tell me immediately. You do not engage. You do not take risks. You observe and report. Understood? Understood. We spent the next 2 hours at the warehouse while Kenzo coordinated cleanup and made arrangements for the families of the dead. I watched him move through the difficult conversations with a grace I hadn't expected, offering condolences and financial support with genuine care. This wasn't the cold, calculating man I'd first met adjusting his tie. This was someone who understood that leadership meant bearing the weight of every loss. When we finally returned to the estate at 3:45 p.m., Yuki Tanaka was waiting in the front hall. I heard about Marlborough Street, she said. 4 good men dead. Yes. Kenzo's voice was tired. I'm handling it. I'm sure you are. Her eyes shifted to me. And what role does Miss Kane play in your handling of it? She's going to map Volkov's movements at the port, help us predict their next move. Interesting. Yuki's expression revealed nothing. And if she's caught? If Volkov's people identify her as one of ours? She won't be caught. You sound very certain. I am certain. She survived worse than Doc's surveillance. He moved toward the stairs, then stopped. Mother, I appreciate your concern, but Amaris is part of this family now. She needs to contribute, and this is how she contributes. Yuki watched him disappear up the stairs, then turned her full attention to me. This is your test, Miss Kane. Not the one I mentioned before. This is the real test. Can you gather intelligence without getting caught? Can you identify patterns that trained soldiers miss? Can you prove you're worth the risk my son is taking by trusting you? I can. We shall see. Because if you fail, if you compromise this operation through carelessness or incompetence, 4 dead men will become 8, or 12, or more. She stepped closer. War has momentum, Miss Kane. Once it starts, it's very difficult to stop. My son is betting that you can help us win quickly and decisively. I hope for all our sakes that he's right. She walked away, leaving me alone in the hall with the weight of 4 bodies and the knowledge that tomorrow I'd be walking into enemy territory with nothing but my instincts to keep me alive. I touched the knife hidden in my jacket pocket and headed upstairs to prepare. The port at 6 a.m. was a different world. Massive container ships loomed against the gray dawn sky, cranes moving with mechanical precision, the constant beeping of forklifts and truck reversals creating an industrial symphony. Helen had provided me with credentials identifying me as Sarah Chen, Quality Control Inspector for Pacific Rim Logistics. The fake name felt like armor. I spent the first day learning the rhythm of the place, which berths handled what kind of cargo, which workers were regulars and which were temporary contractors, where the security cameras pointed and where the blind spots existed. By 4:30 p.m., I had 3 notebooks filled with observations and 200 photos on the company phone Kenzo had given me. Berth 17 showed exactly the kind of activity you'd expect from a major operation. Extra security, workers moving with purpose, supervisors checking manifests with unusual frequency. It looked legitimate. It felt wrong. Day 2. I focused on berth 9. Smaller operation, fewer workers. But something about it nagged at me. The trucks that came and went were too clean, too new. The workers moved like military, precise and disciplined. And at 11:45 a.m., I saw a man I recognized from the photos Kenzo had shown me. Anton Fedorov, one of Damian Volkov's top enforcers. He stayed for 7 minutes, spoke to 3 people, and left in a black Mercedes with tinted windows. That was all the confirmation I needed. I called Kenzo from a payphone 6 blocks away. Berth 9. Tomorrow night, probably between 10 p.m. and 2 a.m. When traffic is lowest, they're using berth 17 as distraction. You're certain? Fedorov was there this morning. He wouldn't waste time on a decoy operation. Silence on the line for 3 seconds, then, "Come home. We move tonight." The meeting happened in Kenzo's office at 7:15 p.m. 12 men in tactical gear, plus Kenzo, Yuki, and me. The map of the port district covered the entire desk, marked with positions and approach vectors. "Volkov thinks we're watching berth 17, Kenzo said, his voice carrying command. "He's wrong. We hit berth 9 at 11:30 p.m., fast and surgical. Primary objective is to seize the shipment. Secondary objective is to send a message that no one moves product through our territory without permission." "What about witnesses?" one of the men asked. "No civilians harmed." "Volkov's people only. Make it clean." Kenzo's eyes swept the room. "This isn't revenge for Marlborough Street. This is business. We take what's ours, we eliminate the threat, and we remind the city why the Tanaka family has held this territory for 3 decades. The men filed out to prepare. Yuki remained, studying the map with the same intensity she'd used examining her orchids. "This is bold," she said. "Perhaps too bold. If you're wrong about the location, if this is a trap, you'll lose men and credibility." "I'm not wrong. Amaris saw Fedorov. He doesn't make mistakes." Yuki's eyes shifted to me. "And you, Miss Kane? Are you prepared for what comes next? This will not be surveillance from a distance. This will be close, violent, and permanent. I understand. Do you? Because understanding intellectually and experiencing viscerally are very different things. When bullets start flying and men start dying, there is no room for hesitation or moral complexity. There is only survival and loyalty. Then I'll survive, and I'll be loyal. She studied me for another long moment, then nodded. Very well. Kenzo, she goes with you. Keep her close. Mother, that's not necessary. She's done her part. No, she predicted this. She deserves to see the result of her intelligence work. And I want to know how she handles herself when theory becomes reality. Yuki's expression was unreadable. Consider it the final part of her evaluation. We left the estate at 10:45 p.m. in 3 vehicles, approaching the port from different angles to avoid detection. I rode with Kenzo in the second vehicle, my heart hammering against my ribs as we got closer. He'd given me a bulletproof vest that felt too heavy, and a weapon I prayed I wouldn't have to use. Stay behind me, he said, as we pulled into position 2 blocks from berth 9. If shooting starts, you get to cover and you stay there. You do not play hero. Understood? Understood. But plans never survive first contact. We moved in at 11:28 p.m., silent shadows flowing through the maze of containers. Kenzo's team had done this before, their movements coordinated and efficient. I stayed close to Kenzo, exactly 2 steps behind and to his right, the way he'd instructed. Berth 9 was quiet, too quiet. Then I saw it, the glint of a scope on top of a container, same as the rooftop in the alley. Sniper 3 o'clock high. Kenzo's hand signal stopped the team cold. 2 seconds later, the night erupted. Muzzle flashes lit the darkness like lightning. The sniper's first shot went wide, hitting the pavement where Kenzo had been standing. Return fire from our team forced the shooter into cover. Then more shooters appeared, at least 8 of them, positioned in containers around the berth. It was a trap. They'd known we were coming. Fall back! Kenzo's voice cut through the chaos. Controlled retreat to secondary positions. But retreat meant crossing open ground, and open ground meant exposure. I saw one of our men go down, his leg torn apart by automatic fire. Another took rounds to his vest, knocking him flat. This was the moment Yuki had warned me about. The moment where theory became blood and choice became consequence. I grabbed a smoke grenade from the downed man's belt and threw it into the gap between containers. Gray smoke billowed, cutting visibility. Move, now! Kenzo's team used the cover, dragging their wounded across the kill zone. I stayed low, providing covering fire with the pistol Kenzo had given me, not trying to hit anything, just making the enemy keep their heads down. Then, I saw him, Damien Volkov himself, standing in the open like he owned the night, a rifle in his hands and a smile on his face. He was aiming at Kenzo's back. I didn't think, didn't hesitate, didn't calculate. I fired 3 rounds. The first missed. The second caught Volkov in the shoulder, spinning him sideways. The third hit center mass, and he went down. The shooting stopped like someone had cut a wire. For 5 seconds, nothing moved. Then chaos erupted again, but different this time, panicked. Volkov's men were retreating, dragging their fallen leader, shouting in Russian. Kenzo grabbed my arm. We need to leave, now! The drive back to the estate passed in a blur. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. I just shot a man, maybe killed him. The weight of it felt like drowning in concrete. When we arrived, Yuki was waiting in the front hall. She looked at me, at my shaking hands, at the smoke residue on my jacket. Did you kill him? She asked. I don't know. Maybe. Good. She said it with absolute certainty. You made the choice that mattered. You protected my son when protection was needed. That is what family does. Kenzo put his hand on my shoulder. You saved my life. Again. 3 times now. I couldn't let him shoot you. I know. His expression was softer than I'd ever seen it. That's why you're mine. That's why you'll always be mine. Because when it mattered most, you chose loyalty over safety. You chose us over everything else. The realization hit me then. I'd crossed the final line. I'd taken a life to protect this family, and there was no going back from that. No return to the person I'd been 4 weeks ago, scrubbing floors and keeping my head down. I was now part of the Tanaka family, a soldier in a war I'd chosen to fight. And somehow, impossibly, that felt right. Damien Volkov survived. The news came 3 days later through channels I was only beginning to understand, the network of informants and paid officials that kept Kenzo informed of everything happening in the city's underworld. The shoulder wound had been serious, but not fatal. The center mass shot had hit his vest. He was alive, in hiding. And, according to intelligence reports, negotiating a truce. The war was over before it had really begun. He knows he can't win, Kenzo explained as we sat in his office reviewing the terms. We proved that at the port. His own people are questioning his judgment. The families he thought would support him are backing away. And now he's wounded, weak, vulnerable. He wants peace before someone in his own organization decides to finish what you started. What are the terms? He withdraws all operations from our territory. He pays reparations for Marlborough Street and the 4 men we lost. And he publicly acknowledges that the Eastern Port District belongs to the Tanaka family. Kenzo leaned back in his chair. In exchange, we don't hunt him. We let him keep his remaining territory and rebuild his reputation if he can. That's generous. It's strategic. Dead enemies become martyrs. Humiliated enemies become cautionary tales. He smiled that cold, dangerous smile. Besides, killing him now would start a real war. His family would have no choice but to retaliate, and more people would die. This way, everyone gets to walk away. Except the 4 men from Marlborough Street. Except them. His expression darkened. Their families have been taken care of. Houses paid off, trust funds established, jobs guaranteed for anyone who needs them. It doesn't bring them back, but it's what we can offer. The truce was formalized at a neutral location 3 days later. I didn't attend. Kenzo said my presence would be inflammatory, given that I was the one who'd shot Volkov. Instead, I spent the day with Yuki in the solarium, learning the names of her orchids and listening to stories about the early days of the Tanaka family's rise to power. My husband was brilliant but reckless, she said, pruning a white bloom with surgical precision. He believed in expansion, in taking what he wanted through force. It made him powerful, but also made him enemies. When he died, those enemies thought the family would collapse without him. But it didn't. No, because I understood something he never did. Power is not about how much territory you hold. It's about how well you hold it. Quality over quantity. Loyalty over fear. She set down her pruning shears and looked at me. You proved your loyalty at the port. You made the choice that mattered when most people would have frozen or run. That is why you are still here. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. Loyalty is not a single choice. It's 1,000 choices made over years, each one reinforcing or undermining the ones before it. Her eyes never left mine. Sakura was loyal for 2 years before she betrayed us. 2 years of perfect behavior, perfect choices, perfect loyalty. And then one day she decided the money was worth more than the family. I'm not Sakura. No, you're not. Sakura was acting. You are simply being yourself. That is both your strength and your danger. She returned to her orchids. But you have proven yourself enough that I will stop questioning your presence here. You are family now, Miss Kane. For better or worse. The gala was held 2 weeks later at the Grand Imperial Hotel. A celebration of the truce and a demonstration of the Tanaka family's continued dominance. Politicians, business leaders, and the heads of allied families all attended, filling the ballroom with expensive suits and practiced smiles. I wore a black dress that Helen had selected, simple and elegant, and stood near the entrance watching Kenzo work the room. He moved through the crowd with the same grace he brought to everything, shaking hands, laughing at jokes, projecting strength and confidence. At 8:45 p.m., he found me standing alone near the bar. Your tie is crooked, I said. He smiled, that genuine warm smile I'd only seen a handful of times. Is it? Perhaps you should fix it. I stepped closer, reaching up to adjust the silk knot just as I had that first day when Malio had waited with a gun and murder in his heart. My fingers brushed the fabric, smoothing it into place, and I was struck by how much had changed in just 6 weeks. 6 weeks ago, I'd been nobody, a maid scrubbing floors and dreaming of escape. Now I was standing in a ballroom full of the city's elite, wearing a dress that cost more than I used to make in 6 months, adjusting the tie of a man who controlled an empire built on secrets and loyalty and the careful application of violence. "There," I said, stepping back. "Perfect." Not quite. Kenzo reached into his jacket and pulled out a small velvet box. "I had this made for you, a reminder of what you are to this family." Inside was a silver pin shaped like an orchid, delicate and beautiful and clearly expensive. He took it from the box and pinned it to my dress, just above my heart. "The orchid is our family symbol," he explained. "Beautiful but resilient, delicate in appearance but nearly impossible to kill. My mother wears one, my father wore one, and now you wear one." I touched the pin, feeling the weight of what it represented. Not just acceptance, not just membership, but permanence. "Thank you." "Don't thank me. You earned it." He offered his arm. "Now come. There are people you should meet. Allies who need to know that the woman who saved my life 3 times is not someone to be underestimated." We walked into the ballroom together, and I felt the eyes tracking us, assessing, calculating. Some saw curiosity, some saw a threat, some saw an opportunity. But I knew what I was. I was Amaris. I was Tanaka. I was the woman who'd thrown a brass planter and spotted a sniper and fired 3 rounds when it mattered most. I was the woman behind the throne, and I was exactly where I belonged. The orchestra played, champagne flowed, politicians made promises they'd never keep, and business leaders negotiated deals that would reshape the city's underground economy. And through it all, I stood at Kenzo's side with an orchid pinned over my heart, and the knowledge that I'd finally found something worth fighting for, something worth killing for, something worth dying for if it came to that. The girl from Memphis, who'd spent her whole life running, had finally stopped running, had finally found a place where her particular set of skills, her instincts, her willingness to cross lines that most people wouldn't even approach, made her not a liability, but an asset. I caught my reflection in one of the ballroom's tall mirrors and barely recognized the woman looking back, poised, confident, dangerous in ways that didn't announce themselves, but were there beneath the surface like a blade hidden in silk. Kenzo leaned close, his voice low enough that only I could hear. "What are you thinking?" "That I'm home," I said. "For the first time in my life, I'm actually home." He smiled and raised his champagne glass. "To new beginnings." I touched my glass to his. "To family." The crystal chimed, pure and clear, a sound like promise and warning all at once. And somewhere in the city, in the territories we controlled and the shadows we commanded, the Tanaka Empire continued its work. Stronger now, more secure, protected by the woman who'd learned to see threats before they materialized, who'd learned that loyalty was the only currency that mattered, who'd learned that sometimes the people who save you are the ones you never expected. The night stretched ahead, full of possibility and danger and the kind of choices that would define the rest of my life. But I was ready for all of it, because I was Amaris Kane, and I was finally, impossibly, home. Thank you for staying with me until the very end of this incredible journey. If this story touched your heart, wait until you see what's coming next. It's even more powerful and inspiring than you can imagine. So don't go anywhere. Click on that video showing on your screen right now to dive into another amazing story that will absolutely blow your mind. Trust me, you won't regret it.